Alright guys, now moving on to the other super classes. This is part 2. If you guys haven't seen part 1, I'll link it down below, but we're checking out all the Ascendancies and I'll give you guys some extra bonus knowledge and recommendations. So now we are moving on to the Witch. So this is for the Blood Mage Ascendancy. So starting right off, we get Sanguimancy, and that's going to grant us another skill. So it says skills gain a base life cost equal to base mana cost. And you might think that that's like a bad thing, but sometimes it's like if you are under this condition, whatever, then it won't really be like a bad thing for your character. It's almost like a buff in another way. So this is Life Remnants, so it's going to grant you a skill. And it says, drinks the blood of your enemies to restore your life. While active, enemies you kill have a chance to spawn a life remnant, and critically hitting a target spawns a life remnant every few seconds. Picking up a life remnant grants you life, which can overflow your maximum life. So you can get more HP than your, I guess, maximum life. I'm going to have to see what overflow is. Maybe they'll have it. No, it doesn't actually have it in this one. It's kind of a brand new mechanic, but we'll have to wait and see how this works, because if I'm killing an enemy, then it has to spawn something and I have to walk backwards to pick it up. That's going to be something I don't really like, but you know, that's a different place. It's almost like a healing orb in, what, D3, right? And then we have Vitality Siphon, so we have 10% of the spell damage you leech as life. Okay, and then we also have your curses have infinite duration. A lot of times with these application of curses, if you're thinking like, oh, that's kind of good, I don't have to keep on applying them. Most curses in Path of Exile are applied automatically. You're going to have like a curse on hit. Usually it's on like some sort of ring. It'll curse enemies with whatever condition. So I wouldn't really say that the infinite duration is going to be very big, but there could be some other plays with this that could enable something cool. But for the most part, from like a perspective of, you know, without going too complex, this one might not be incredibly insane. Then we have Blood Barbs. We gain 10% of damage as extra physical damage, and then elemental damage also contributes to bleeding magnitude. So it's like that amount, I guess, that you bleed the enemy for. So if you want to do maybe a bleed build, probably look at, obviously, the Blood Mage. And then we have increased critical damage per bonus per 40 life. So the more HP you have, the more crit damage that you actually have. This could actually be pretty cool. When I see these sort of things, I think that the build is going to be a lot better, because you have infinite scalability, right? Like the more HP you have, your character becomes more tanky, and then more tanky equals also more damage. So you have like two different things that you're scaling while just scaling HP, right? So I think that this is what makes this class really good. And then we have Sunder the Flesh. Base critical hit chance for spells is 15%. It's massive. Okay, so I actually need to bring this up. So I went ahead and brought up this website. This is POE DBTW. It's a really, really great website. They're also going to do POE 2 stuff, but looking at some of the base critical strike chance, to explain this, because I think it's important, because a lot of people are coming from, like, let's say Diablo. So how crit works, if you get, like, let's say a bow that says like 100% critical strike chance on like one of the affixes, you might be thinking, oh, this has got 100% crit. So how it works is whatever skill that you're using or whatever weapon that you're using, that is the amount. So if I was to get 100% like crit chance on my skill tree, and the base crit is 6%, I'm getting another 100% of 6%, which is 6%. So this is very important, because again, this essentially means if I get 100% crit, well, that's going to be 15%, which is actually pretty massive. So I want to say that these two alone really make the class a lot more powerful. I mean, this is doubling your crit, essentially. I know it may not seem like that in terms of the number, because it's like only 15%. It really, really is a big jump. I mean, comparing to, it depends on the skill that you're using. Some of them may have different ones, but for the most part, that is a very massive jump. Anyways, this one we have Grasping Wounds. 25% life loss from hits is prevented. Then that much life is lost over 4 seconds. Oh, this is literally Progenesis. Okay, so this is like an item that's like very, 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 very expensive. So it's a potion. It basically has that effect. It's a potion. So 25% of your life loss is prevented. So basically, it's not necessarily 25% less damage, but that much is then regened through other means. Usually you can do things like recoup. So if you have like life recuperate plus this, then you just take less damage, because that damage that's lost, it really is supposed to prevent like one-shots, and it actually is pretty dang good. The other thing, I think I've seen this before, it's like 20% of your damage taken is redirected to the Hellhound, but I think that these two are really, really strong. This one, it is actually pretty good. It's literally Progenesis, but the other one, just 20% less damage taken, obviously is pretty dang good, as long as the pet doesn't die, which we'll get into, which is the other Ascendancy. But then there's Crimson Power, which gains energy shield from equipped body armor as extra maximum life. That could be pretty dang big. Don't know how big the energy shield from armors can have in PoE 2, but like, maybe there's something unique that has a crazy amount. And remember, the more HP that you have, more survivability, and you get that increased critical damage. I don't know how the overflow works, if that registers off of this, or if it doesn't count overflow. But the reason why I would pick this class, if I was to select this one, you can maybe do something with bleed, but I want to say the main thing that you would actually focus in on is probably just stacking HP, and then the base crit is really good too. So like 5 and 6 are the ones that I would look out for specifically with that. Now, checking out the Infernalist over here, this one, I believe is supposed to be like the main like summoning class right now. So right now we have damage cold is taken as fire, lightning is taken as fire, and then physical as chaos. This is actually a pretty nice thing, as long as you can either be immune to chaos damage. I mean, that's just 20% less damage, but as long as you scale it to have maximum fire res, this could actually make it worth a little bit more worth it, because the class, like, you have to, do you have to take this one? Okay, no, this is 1. Okay, you don't have to take this one. Okay, that's great. Because some of the classes I've noticed, like, they just start off with, like, you, like, almost have to take this one, because you want something that's, if you want to get 9, you have to get 7, right? You can't just skip it. So anyways, we have some, like, damage swaps over here. Then we have reserves 25% of your life, plus 1 to maximum spirit per 25 maximum life. And then over here, we actually have reserves 25% life, plus 1 to maximum mana per 6 maximum life. So the more HP that you have, you can get a lot more mana, which could be good for mana stacking. So I like this idea. And then we also have this one, Bedette's Hand, which reserves 25% of your life, 1 to maximum energy shield per maximum life. Oh, okay. So I guess you can go and play like absolutely like a low life variant of a build, and maybe this is what this is meant for. And then we have Maximum to Demon Flame, which is the demonic possession. So this grants you demon form, which lets you shapeshift while vastly boosting the power of your spells. You gain demon flame every second you remain in demon form, causing your life to be lost at an ever increasing rate. Revert to human form if you reach 1 life. Use a skill that isn't a spell, or reactivate the skill. Okay. So I don't know if that means you could just sit there and regen to the point where like you can stay in demon form forever. But if it constantly increases your power, I don't know how it scales. Like, does it give you more and more power as you stay in the demon form? Or is it like you gain, 10, 20%, but you still lose life, and it just gets an ever increasing rate? So it just goes higher and higher. This is something, again, where like I couldn't tell you just by like going and over just the text here. This is something you'd have to see in the game what the numbers are, and I don't know if that will be revealed at launch, but yeah. Anyways, next up we have Pyromaniac Pact. Maximum mana is replaced by maximum Infernal Flame, so you gain Infernal Flame instead of spending mana for skill cost. Take maximum life and energy shield as fire damage when Infernal Flame reaches maximum. Lose all Infernal Flame on reaching maximum Infernal Flame. 10% of Infernal Flame lost per second if none was gained in the past 2 seconds. So basically, you have this area where like you could get too much of it and it builds up. I would say I probably couldn't recommend this, because sometimes players are like, oh man, I really want to try this thing, and it's like, it's going to brick your build potentially if you get this. And as far as I'm aware of, since you can't respec, if your mana gets completely replaced by this, and I don't know, I would say this one I couldn't really recommend for beginners in terms of like selecting it. I mean, it could be good. I mean, it depends on, again, what these numbers are looking like. But again, this could be an easy brick where you're spamming all the things and you just delete yourself. You just literally, you take too much damage. Because it's, you take maximum as fire damage. Keep in mind, like, obviously you would get fire resistance when running this, because it does make you take fire damage. Now, that isn't always a bad thing, because you can run things, I think it was called, like, the Eye of Innocence, where it's like, is it based on Ignite? There's other items in the game, basically. What I'm trying to say is that can do something on a condition when you take fire damage. When you get ignited, this sort of thing happens. So, it not necessarily is always going to be a downside, but again, it's more for like complex builds that require you to either follow a guide or be really interested in spending hundreds of hours. Like, I'm not even kidding when I say people do spend tons and tons, like hundreds of hours on perfecting some really weird, obscure build to be like, I need to take exactly this amount of damage on this interval within this time frame for this thing to like not overlap, because you get certain breakpoints in the game. This is where this thing could be really cool for those crazy tinkering builds. Anyways, Bringer of Flame, while not on low Infernal Flame, all damage from you and allies in your presence contributes to Ignite, Chance, and Magnet. It's like whatever, everything can do Ignite. Then we have the Hellhound. So this is 20% of damage from hits is taken to your Hellhound before you. As long as the minion can survive, I don't know how strong minions are going to be in the game. Obviously, if the minions melt super fast, then this would be terrible. But as long as it is tanky enough, I mean, that's just 20% DR. I think that is pretty good. Minions in general, minion builds, are usually a little bit more tanky because you have all these minions either blocking because they're just going to sit there. And I'm curious to see how aggressive the minions are, because like in Diablo 4, minions are just not aggressive enough, but like in PoE, I mean, you can run something that makes them more aggressive, so they actually seek out an attack, and that's one thing that I really care about before even trying minions. I want to make sure they're aggressive enough, otherwise, like, I just wouldn't really want to play this. Anyways, Gritting Immolation, become ignited when you deal a critical hit, taking 50% of your life and energy shield as fire damage per second, but you get 30% more critical damage bonus. So, I mean, if you're constantly being ignited, you can maybe make it so, like, you're not affected by Ignite, so that'd be one way of, like, countering it. But you can also make it so when you are ignited, this X, Y, and Z happens. Again, this is a way more complex build than I would say most people would want for, like, a minion sort of a thing. Unless you just want to, like, just take Loyal Hellhound and then not take anything else. I guess you get extra, like, stats. But these reserve HP, yeah, I probably would say stay away from this class if you're a beginner player. And then while on High Infernal Flame, you and your allies in your presence, you gain 20% of damage as fire damage. Okay. So, I mean, I guess you can take, like, you could take 9 and 10. Let's see, where are those located? Oh, you'd have to get 7 as well, which would make it so your maximum mana is replaced. And I don't know if you'd want that, like, you know, because you may be getting some bonus with your mana, but nonetheless, that's the Infernalist. All right, next up, we're going to move on to the Witch Hunter. So this class is actually looking pretty promising, but there are some huge differences in PoE 2 that are mentioned in this one. So this is going to be like the range class. Think of it kind of like a ranger or a bow character, but they use a crossbow instead. So we have Weapon Master. Well, you're not always limited to using a crossbow, but that's the way the class is designed. So Weapon Master, you have 20 passive skill points become weapon set skill points. Oh, okay. Does it tell us what that is? What's a weapon set skill points? I have no idea what that actually is. Does that mean you just get like another like bonus? And then we also have Culling Strike. Yeah, because this one doesn't specify, I couldn't tell you or give you any info on it. But Pitiless Killer, Culling Strike. So Culling Strike over here, sorry my face is blocking it, but Culling Strike kills normal enemies if their life is at 30% or below. Magic enemies are killed at 20, rare at 10, and unique at 5. These thresholds are checked before the damage of the hit is applied. How Culling Strike used to work in PoE 1 is at 10%, the thing is just dead. Now there's other things that you can increase the amount of the Culling Strike threshold, but the fact that it's unique at 5%, usually you would always throw Culling Strike on like as a support gem on like some like trash like skeleton. It could be like, you could literally hit for 1 damage on a skeleton. You don't even need to be a summoner. It's just if it has Culling Strike and the thing's at 10% HP, it just deletes it. And it was really helpful against specifically bosses, as a lot of bosses in general get harder and harder as the fight goes on. So you want to eliminate them faster, and the Culling Strike was great for that. But at 5% on the unique, which is most of the bosses, they're going to be uniques. Rare, it's like whatever. I don't know if I would say that this is like really good, but you know what is pretty good is I think it's Decimating Strike. This is what's really good with this class. So it says hits against full life enemies are removed between 5 and 30% of life before the damage of the hit is applied. If this works against bosses, I mean, I just get 30% of the boss's life instantly, and then I also have Culling Strike. I mean, it's only 5%, but I still think that Decimating Strike is potentially super OP. Now, I'm not sure if this is a check on if it's unique, normal, or whatever, because I was thinking that, like, oh, this is probably, like, the opposite of the Culling Strike, so it's, like, in the very beginning, and I want to say it's probably based off of the monster's, like, rarity. So if I was able to hit the endgame super Omega boss for 30% and it's RNG, that is too big. I don't think they would ever do that. I think how it does is it just does the 5% instantly on the like unique, which is it's not very good. But if it does work RNG and you could smack something for 30% of its HP, and this is an RNG number, then this is incredibly good, and I would probably consider running this class for a lot of different builds, because that is simply just too much numbers. And then we have Judge, Jury, and Executioner, which gives you Decimating Strikes, which, yeah, we just went over that. And we already went over Culling. And then Concentration, enemies have less cooldown recovery rate the lower their concentration, scaling down to 50% less. Cooldown recovery rate when concentration is 0, which is probably tied to something else here. So we have Witchbane. Enemies have maximum concentration equal to 40% of their maximum life. Break enemies' concentration on hit equal to 100% of the damage dealt. Enemies regain 10% of concentration every second if they haven't lost concentration in the past 5 seconds. Okay, so they have less cooldown recovery rate. So this could be maybe okay for bosses, as long as there's no, like, you know, negative effect. Sometimes on, like, specific, like, bosses, you get less of whatever, like, it does. Like, this was the case with, like, curses and a lot of things for a lot of debuffs in PoE 1. They did change some of them, but just take that with like a grain of salt. Some of these numbers are going to be changed for bosses. Then we have No Mercy, so you deal up to 30% more damage to enemies based on their missing concentration. So, I mean, 30% more damage is pretty good. It probably ramps, obviously it's going to be ramping up, but that's based off of 40% of their max life. And then we have Obsessive Ritual, so it grants a sorcery reward. You have 50% less armor and evasion. So does it tell us what sorcery reward is? Okay, here it is. So passively manifests a protective barrier, which takes elemental damage from hits until depleted. The barrier instantly recharges to its full value after a short time after it stops taking damage or is fully depleted. This could be actually pretty big for bosses if they have like a big like one-shot thing over here. I mean, you do have a pretty big downside, but it is pretty decent for maybe like, let's say, a big spell hit, especially like a physical spell. This is something I would consider against bossing. This could be very, very big. It also reminds me of like the Elementalist, how you get that shield. Probably very similar to that. It does say elemental hits, but you do have like there is a very big downside. So it's a give and a take at least. And then at 7 we have a Ceremonial Ablution, which says 50% increased effect of sorcery ward, and sorcery record recovers 50% faster. So I guess if you grab both of these, it could be very good against certain bosses that, again, if they do any elemental damage, this could be a relatively tanky class. And then we have Zealous Inquisition, 10% chance for enemies you kill to explode, dealing 100% of their maximum life as physical damage. Chance is doubled against undead and demons. So there was a thing called Explodey Chest that was really good. It was like, it got nerfed so many dang times, but there's very few things in Path of Exile that give you this effect of chance for enemies you kill to explode, dealing whatever amount of damage. There's an item called Impulsa that is very good. Let me pull this up. But here's the item. So it's shocked enemies you kill explode, dealing 5% of their life as lightning damage. And then that can't shock, but you can still basically apply it in other ways. You can get it on your gloves. But basically, you would use this, and this is the one of like the very few things that has 100% chance of doing this. Now this is doubled against undead and demons, so I guess if you're doing a very specific map, then you have 20% chance for it to work. Again, this like effect in general in Path of Exile has always been incredibly sought after, so it really can help out with clear speed. But honestly, if you run like any like variant of like SNS with like a lightning warp, you can do some crazy stuff with speed anyways. But I don't know. This one has some potential for people if you enjoy speed, but I think that people would probably just play with Deadeye, to be honest. But I don't think it's bad. It's not like terrible at all. But as far as like this one, we have the next one, which is Mercenary Legionnaire for the Mercenary Overview. So let's go ahead and check out this one, and I'll give you guys my recommendation here. So for starters, we have 10% of quality 2 skills. So what quality of skills usually does is like a very small amount of like damage. Now it's all of your skills, so that can be extra like, let me actually show you this. So every single gem in PoE will have like its level of the gem, but what we're looking for is at the very bottom where it says additional effects from quality in like the white. You get 0 to 20% more damage with Ignite. So a lot of these will give you some small amount of damage, like increases. It depends on the skill. There's certain like aura effects where it can increase the radius. It depends on the skill that you're looking at. Some of them are going to be bigger than others. Like this one, chains 0 to 2 times. Chain is a very good stat, and if you were to get an additional chain, which means that it hits one target and then bounces to another target, and if you can get it to go from 2 times to 3 times, this is actually a pretty good thing. It's very build defiant, so you need to have a build that can benefit off of this. Again, I don't know what build you're playing, but this could be actually pretty big for certain builds. And then we have +1 level to all skills. This is like an okay thing. It depends on what skill you're playing. As you start increasing levels and you get further and further, it gives you more and more damage. Let me give you an example of this as well. So more recently, PoE made it so as you put more skill points into like your attack skills, you would get a much better result. How it used to work basically is unless it was a spell, like plus levels didn't really matter. You get like just a small amount of damage. But as you increase, well, there are some thresholds where like you will get like another bonus via a level, but this is like the base damage. As you increase it in levels, you get more and more. It depends on the skill. It's specifically with spells, like the more that you go up, like you can see going from like a 20 to a 21, you get like 1% here and there. But there's other things also that you can factor in, because this shocks enemies as though you dealt more damage, which actually gives you more damage. But there's also going to be potentially requirements of requiring more of the like the stat to actually use the gem as well. So there's kind of like a kind of a double-edged sword with it, but for the most part it is going to be a damage increase. But these are a little bit more interesting. Like for the most part, like these are very safe. For like there's not one build that doesn't benefit off of quality. There's not one build that doesn't benefit off. This is like generic, like it's going to be good for every single build, whether you're playing melee or if you want to use your crossbow or not. Then we have advanced thaumaturgy, which is 30% less cost of skills, and skill gems has 30% more attribute requirements. So there's like a double-edged sword with it, but I'm guessing that you're going to have the requirements anyways for it. But the 30% less cost is really worth it. You can just get minus mana cost rings, at least in PoE 1, and then your stuff doesn't cost any mana, but it could be something to consider. And then we have 3 additional skill slots. I was thinking this is 3 additional links. It doesn't work like that. It's just 3 extra skill slots for extra skills. It could be kind of fun, but I wouldn't play the class for this thing at all. And then gem studded. You can use 2 copies of the same support gem in different skills. I think it would be cool if it was the same skills. Like I could throw in like, you know, multiple of the same support gem if I really liked it. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. I really don't know why you can't even use a different copy of another support gem. The reason why it's probably designed this way is like you have different like ammo types that you're supposed to swap into, like frost, explode, I don't know, grenades. There's probably a lot of things that you may want to like overlap and run like the same, like, you know, multiple projectiles or whatever. And that's why they include this, but I wouldn't run the class for this either. Then we have some sort of like defensive stat where you get maximum resistance per blue, red, or green if you need certain maximum resistance. This is a really good stat, but then you're still forcing yourself to play all those copies of the other one, which that can become a nightmare on its own. Now you do have additional skill slots, and there could be some other builds that can really beef up one specific resistance, but to expect to get all of these resistance up like 5 to 10 each, good luck. It's really not realistic. And then adaptive capability. Attribute requirements of gems can be satisfied by your highest attributes, and then inherent bonus from intelligence, strength, and dexterity are doubled. So the reason why I would select this class is the very first 2, these are like good for every single build. It doesn't matter what you're playing. You can play minions on this. It's just good in general, like plus level of all and the quality. So those are the 2 that I would recommend. But if you really want to be more of an advanced player and you're like, I want to become a dexterity stacker, there's a lot of builds where it's like based on your dexterity. I don't know, like hollow palm. There's a lot of builds where it's like you can build your whole character after getting like thousands and thousands of inch strength or dexterity, and there's other items that can give you bonus damage based on that as well. So you can get survivability, damage. Again, it's more of like an advanced thing, but even for casual players, I would say that this class looks pretty solid. You know, mainly for these 2, but as far as like the defense goes, I would say you're playing it for these 2, and then you have basically. This one's like a maybe, but you have like 2 okay ascendancies here. I don't know if I would say that this class is going to be insane. It depends on how that decimating strike also works. If it works, then you can RNG 30% on a like pinnacle boss, then this is way better. But again, I'll have to read. And then next up, I think this is a final class over here, man. This is the monk, so this is a brand new class. So starting right off, we have Lead Me Through Grace. So you gain 1 spirit every 6. You gain 1 spirit for every 6 energy shield on the equipped body armor. You can also gain, it's 1 spirit for every 6 energy shield on the equipped body armor. Then it's gaining 1 spirit for every 15 evasion rating on equipped body armor. And then you cannot gain spirit from equip. And I think it's important to go over spirit if they actually show it over here. Alright, so what spirit actually is it's granted by some items. Now, with the Invoker, you cannot gain spirit from equipment, so there's like a pretty big downside, but how spirit works is, think of it kind of like a resource to have other auras. So in PoE 1, you would reserve mana, right? But there's a reservation of spirit, so depending on what buff you're getting, so you have pretty much all of these buffs that would be able to be activated. So if you want to be maybe an aura bot, which is kind of known to just be like a support player, and you just have all these auras, I don't know if it's going to work, but this is definitely one class that would potentially enable it. And then we also have and Protect Me from Harm, which gives you evasion rating, also grants physical damage reduction, but you have 40% less evasion rating. So I guess it's kind of cool that you would have damage reduction, but you'd have to be stacking crazy amounts of evasion rating for it to give you, you know, good evasion rating and the physical damage reduction. But it still gives you it. And then we have Faith is a choice, which grants you meditate, which doubles your energy shield. It does require you to channel it. I don't know how long it takes. If it's like a quick, like 1 second thing to double your energy shield, and I don't know if it like depletes over time or kind of how it works. We're gonna have to wait and see. But this could be potentially really good against bosses if you start stacking crazy amounts of energy shield. Then you activate this, and then I think that there's like something that does damage based on energy shield with like it's not like a lightsaber. I forgot what they call it, but there is a skill that does use that. So maybe that could be something to consider. And then we have I Am the Blizzard, and there's another one called I Am the Thunder. They're basically the same. You get 10% of the damage that you deal as extra cold or lightning. And then with Blizzard, on freezing enemies, you get to create chilled ground. So it's going to obviously slow them down. And then you have shocked to create shocked ground. So you get to make it so they're going to take more damage on that little area. So it's like I said before, a lot of these numbers in PoE 2 are like 10%. But you also get the bonus on enemies to create chilled ground, so you get like another little bonus with it. But a lot of times in the game, you're just scaling like one sort of damage type. When you start going to the hybrids, there are builds that you can do it, but it might be a little bit more difficult than just scaling it into one, because then all of your items are so far crazy in terms of like what you're getting for bonus. And then when you want to do exposure on, like, let's say cold lightning, like you're not going to throw all 3 different exposures out. It's just like there's just so much to consider when you start splitting your damage in any action RPG, not even just this. Like if you play Diablo, if you're doing like core skills or like your marksman or your cutthroat skills, like this really just splits the damage up too much. But anyways, next up we have And I Shall Rage, which gives you Unbound Avatar, which makes so you gain Unbound Fury by inflicting elemental ailments with hits on enemies. Once you reach a maximum, it's going to consume it, and then it's going to become unbound for a duration, vastly augmenting your elemental prowess. They kind of showed off, I think, gameplay of this, which was like shooting out all these like waves of different like elements. Again, when you start converting your like damage to like multiple, it can be very difficult. And then it says meta skills gain 35% more energy. And then I'm not even sure what that actually is. And then Sunder My Enemies, critical hits ignore non-negative enemy monster elemental resistance, which is actually good. So if I was to play this class, I would probably play it for this. And it almost reminds me of with it, like I think Templar gets this in PoE 1. So if you crit, you get to ignore their resistances, which is really big, specifically on bosses. Like if I was to play this class, I would want it just for this. And if you're doing lightning or cold, well, then obviously you just get 10% as extra. It's take 10% more damage. And then, so I'd look at 4 or 5. Again, if you want to do cold or lightning, and then 8 could be really good as well. Obviously, this one, you're probably going to do some sort of elemental damage. And then maybe you can squeeze out some extra auras off of this class. That's probably what I would recommend this class for. And then we also have the Acolyte of Trula, which I think a lot of people are interested in. So this is the one that I'd probably recommend. It might be a little bit complex, but I will explain it. So this is the other Monk Ascendancy. So this one over here, you have Mana Leech's instant. So what that means is a lot of times in action RPGs, when you would heal, it would give you like, let's say 10 life on hit. So 10 life on hit is not the same as like the percent leech that you would have, because that is going to regen over time. Instant is obviously much better because it's instantly. So Mana Leech is very important for builds that would use leech so they can recover, so you don't have to spend your buttons on potions, which is very, very nice. Most people just get like the reduction of the mana cost of the skill to be 0 towards like the end of the game for the most part. But this is actually a pretty decent thing, comboing it really well with number 2 over here. Sorry, my face is blocking it, but it says you cannot recharge. Oh yeah, I can't really move it. Anyways, you cannot recharge energy shield, but Mana Leech effects also recover energy shield. So basically, how it works with energy shield is normally you don't take damage and then it recharges, but if it says Mana Leech also recovers your energy shield, then I have like some sort of recovery on my mana and my energy shield. So this is on 1 and 2. So you'd have to get the first one to make Leech instant. That is actually really big. And then with Chayula's Gift, you have +10 to maximum chaos resistance. And then your chaos resistance is doubled. Now this also does work if your resistances are negative. So that could be something like it's a double-edged sword in a sense, depending on how you want to look at it. But for the most part, chaos resistance, unlike fire, cold, and lightning, is usually more rare, and it is kind of expensive on a lot of pieces of gear to get chaos resistance if you want to trade. But this is going to be something we'll have to see, like how important is chaos res in PoE 2. Usually it's something that people kind of consider like more premium and like, man, yeah, you can get it as long as it's not negative, it's not that bad. But for POE 2, I think things are going to be a little bit different, because remember with the maps, you can only rip once. If you rip once, you lose out on the map. That's it. There's no like 6 portals, go next. So this could be something to consider for players that do want to complete all forms of content, especially on bosses that may have chaos damage. Even if your chaos res is 0, that would still be a problem. But you could always just like go, if you know that you're fighting this boss and does chaos damage, then you can just throw on all your pieces with chaos res, right? And then we have reality mending. We have a chance to gain 25% of damage as extra chaos. And we have a 13% and then a 7% chance to get 100% of damage. So what is it? What is this total chance of 43% chance to get something? That's almost half to get 25, 50. This could be interesting to consider. I don't know if a series promises in the game, but that would be a cool thing to mix with, right? And then grant skill into the breach. So into the breach creates a breach around you, allowing you to see nearby flames of Trula. You are considered to be in a breach while this skill is active. This could be more interesting for endgame. There's rings in the game where, like, while in a breach, you get double the effectiveness of your rings. It's a very interesting thing for sure. And there's also lucid dreaming. Effect and duration of flames of Trula on you is double. Okay, we have to go over this to see what it does. Collecting flames of Trula grants a falling. So I'm guessing when we kill enemies, we just get this. So red flames of Trula, you get to leech 7% of your maximum life. Blue flames, you get to leech 7% of your mana. Purple flames provide a stacking buff, granting 7% of damage as chaos damage, and stacks up to 10 times. Okay, so I mean 70% right there, because that's what it is, right? 7. So if you can get that, I don't know how this collection of flames, it lets you see flames. So that means if I activate it, do I have to go do a running simulator, pick them all up, or can I just like absorb them? It depends how far away they are. Because if they're like super far away, I don't want to have to collect all the things like a Sonic game, collect all the rings, and then I can finally like battle. But against bosses, this could be pretty good. There's a lot of bosses that have like a giant, hey, I'm going to fight you phase, and they take 10 seconds, they gotta talk for a little bit, and then they fight you. So maybe it could be good for that, but we'll wait and see how good that is. And then we have Embrace the Darkness. So this one removes all of your spirit. The base maximum darkness is 100. For each life or energy shield lost to damage, you get to reserve 1 darkness instead if possible. Darkness reservation lasts for 10 seconds, plus 5 to maximum darkness per level. I'm not sure how this works, considering it says for each life that you would have lost, so the base of it is 100, but it does get increased per level, so you get like another 500. So if you, I don't know what like good HP in POE 1. I mean, like anywhere from like 5,000 is like pretty comfortable in the game, but like 3 to 5k depending on what kind of defenses you want to go for. So I don't know if this is going to be super powerful, but if there's another way to increase your darkness, maybe that could be another way to scale some defenses. But then we have Grasp of the Void, gain 1% damage as extra chaos damage per 20 unreserved darkness. Okay, so that kind of ties into the other one. So I guess you can get even more extra chaos damage. And we have 50% reduced darkness reservation duration over here. So this one I think is something that if you want to be extra tanky and get way more damage, it looks like it has a lot of potential for good scaling if you really want to get way more damage, because you basically get way more damage, and then the recovery is pretty good. As far as like how this goes, I'm gonna wait and see how much of this can you actually get, if there's anything else that involves it. But for this one, as far as what I could recommend, I would probably stick with Invoker if I was like giving a recommendation to someone that's newer to the game. And the reason why is it looks like a lot more safe. Like this one, I don't know how this interaction's really gonna work. But this one over here with the crits, you can make a crit build for that one. But I know a lot of people were talking about this one. I'm assuming it's because of 1 and 2. Again, it's not necessarily for the mana leech to be interesting. That's okay, but it's mainly that you get to just recover it. And again, mana leech effects also recover energy. So as long as that like also becomes instant, that's gonna be quite nice to have as well. But man, so many classes. Let me know, guys, after seeing this, what class you plan to play. I still plan to actually start off with the Deadeye, as well, I think it's a really good class, like I said, to scale. But if you guys haven't seen part 1, I'll also link it down below. But yeah, what class do you plan to play? For me, it's definitely a Ranger, but I would probably consider Warbringer as like another secondary one, only because Warbringer is really good. But I really want to play the Infernalist because you can transform. I like that idea, and there's going to be more classes later. But that's going to wrap up things. Hopefully this video was informative. Maybe you learned something new. Anyways, drop a like on it and sub if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.